Queen Zarath sat on her crystal throne and stared at the empty hall. The beautiful blue lights that once filled the palace had gone dark. Broken glass covered the floor like fallen stars. She could hear the sound of fighting in the distance, but it was getting closer every day. The queen's blue skin had lost its glow. Her long silver hair hung loose around her shoulders. She used to wear a crown made of living light, but now she had nothing. The crown was lost when the monsters came to her world. 6 months ago, her daughter Kithara had disappeared. The princess was visiting the outer planets when the Void Swarm attacked. These creatures ate everything they touched. They consumed metal, stone, plants, and people. Nothing could stop them. Zarath closed her eyes and tried to reach her daughter's mind. The Valerian people could speak with their thoughts across great distances, but when she searched for Kithara, she found only darkness. Either her daughter was too far away or she was dead. The thought made the queen's heart break again. She had lost her husband in the first attack. Now her daughter was gone too. What kind of mother loses her child? What kind of queen lets her people die? "My queen," said General Vextar as he walked into the throne room. His armor was cracked and dirty. Blood stained his uniform. "We must leave now. The enemy ships are breaking through our last defense line." Zarath did not move. "Have you found any sign of my daughter?" "No, Your Majesty. Our scouts have searched every system. There is no trace of Princess Kithara or her ship." The queen felt tears run down her face. In the old days, her tears would have glowed like liquid starlight. Now they were just water, clear and ordinary. "Then I will not leave," she said. "My queen, please. Our people need you. The transport ships are ready. We can take everyone to the safe zone." "What safe zone?" Zarath stood up and walked to the broken window. Outside, she could see the refugee camps. Thousands of her people lived in tents and temporary shelters. Their beautiful cities were ruins. "The Void Swarm has taken everything. There is nowhere left to run." General Vextar stepped closer. "The scientists think they found a way to hide from the creatures. If we can reach the far edge of the galaxy, if. The queen turned away. "I have heard enough plans. None of them work. None of them bring back the dead." Far across space on the human ship called New Horizon, Captain Jake Morrison was looking at his computer screen. Strange signals were coming from the Xerion system. The messages were broken and weak, but they were clearly from an intelligent species. "What do you think, Captain?" asked his first officer, Lisa Parker. She was a young woman with short red hair and bright green eyes. "Command told us to avoid contact with alien species." Jake was a tall man with brown hair and kind eyes. He had been in space for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like these signals. They sounded desperate, like someone crying for help. "I know what Command said," Jake replied. "But look at these patterns. This isn't just random noise. Someone out there is in trouble." His engineer, Tony Rodriguez, looked up from his workstation. "Captain, those signals are getting weaker. Whatever is happening out there, it's getting worse." Jake stared at the screen for a long moment. His orders were clear. Earth's military wanted human ships to explore space quietly. They were not supposed to make contact with alien life forms until the diplomats were ready. But Jake had joined the space service to help people. It did not matter if those people were human or alien. If someone needed help, he would try to give it. "Set course for the Xerion system," he said. "Sir?" Lisa looked surprised. "That's a direct violation of our orders." "I know." Jake sat down in his captain's chair. "But I've never been good at following orders when people are dying. Log it as a rescue mission. We detected distress signals and responded according to space law." Tony smiled. "Space law says we have to help anyone in danger, regardless of species." "Exactly." Jake turned to his crew. "All hands prepare for jump to light speed. We're going to see if we can help our new neighbors." Back on Xerion Prime, Queen Zarath felt something strange. For just a moment, she thought she sensed a new presence in her mind. It was not Valerian. It was something else, something unfamiliar but not hostile. She shook her head. Grief was making her imagine things. There were no other telepathic species in this part of the galaxy. The Valerians were alone, as they had always been. The queen walked back to her throne and sat down. Around her, the palace continued to crumble. In the distance, the sounds of battle grew louder. Soon, the Void Swarm would reach the capital city. Soon, everything would be over. She thought about her daughter one more time. Kithara had been so young, so full of hope. The princess believed that her people could overcome any challenge. She trusted in the strength of the Valerian Empire. How wrong she had been. How wrong they all had been. As the Queen closed her eyes, she did not know that help was coming. She did not know that somewhere in space a human captain had decided to risk everything to answer a call for help. She did not know that her daughter was still alive, waiting on a cold moon for someone to find her. All she knew was pain and loss, and the weight of a crown that no longer existed. The New Horizon jumped to light speed, racing toward a destiny that would change two species forever. The New Horizon dropped out of light speed at the edge of the Zerion system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge and watched the screens show him a scene of destruction. Broken ships floated in space like dead metal fish. Planets burned with unnatural fire. "My God," whispered Lisa Parker. "What happened here?" Before Jake could answer, their sensors picked up movement. Black ships shaped like insects crawled through space. They were eating the remains of what looked like a once great civilization. "Those must be the Void Swarm," said Tony Rodriguez. "The things that sent the distress signals." "No," Jake said, studying the data. "The distress signals came from the planet. These black ships are what's attacking it." The crew watched in horror as one of the insect ships approached a piece of wreckage. The ship opened like a mouth and swallowed the metal completely. In seconds, there was nothing left. "Captain," said Lisa, "we should leave. We're not equipped to fight those things." Jake nodded, but something on the scanner caught his eye. "Wait, there's something on that moon. A small energy signature. It's weak, but it's definitely artificial." Tony checked his instruments. "It's not one of those monster ships. The signal is different, smaller. Could be a survivor," Jake said. "Tony, can we get to that moon without those creatures seeing us?" The engineer worked at his console for several minutes. "Maybe, if we use the asteroids for cover and keep our engines on minimum power. But Captain, if they catch us, I know the risks." Jake looked at his crew. These people trusted him with their lives. He had no right to put them in danger for strangers. But he also could not leave someone to die alone on a dead moon. "Lisa, what do you think?" His first officer was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. "I think that's why we're out here, sir. To help people who need help, Tony. I'm with you, Captain. Let's go save whoever's down there." Jake felt proud of his crew. "All right then. Take us in, nice and slow." The New Horizon moved carefully through the asteroid field. The black ships did not notice the small human vessel. They were too busy consuming the remains of the dead civilization. The moon was cold and gray. Its surface was covered with craters and sharp rocks. Jake took a team of 3 people down in a shuttle. They wore heavy suits to protect them from the thin air and freezing temperature. "There," said Lisa, pointing to a cave entrance. "The signal is coming from inside." They walked carefully across the rocky ground. Strange crystals grew from the cave walls, giving off a soft blue light. Deeper in the cave, they found what they were looking for. A young alien woman sat against the cave wall. Her skin was pale blue, almost white from cold and fear. Her silver hair was tangled and dirty. She wore torn clothing that might once have been beautiful. When she saw the humans, she tried to crawl away. She made sounds that were clearly words, but in a language none of them understood. Her large eyes showed terror. "Easy," Jake said softly. He pulled off his helmet so she could see his face. "We're here to help." The alien woman stared at him. She had never seen anything like these creatures. They looked somewhat like her people, but their skin was a strange pink color and they had no telepathic abilities at all. Jake moved slowly. He could see that she was hurt. One of her arms was wrapped in torn cloth and she was very thin. She had been hiding in this cave for a long time. He reached into his medical kit and pulled out water and food. The woman watched him carefully as he placed them on the ground between them. Then he backed away. After a few minutes, she reached for the water. She drank it quickly, then grabbed the food. Jake could see tears running down her face. "It's okay," he said gently. "You're safe now." Over the next few hours, Jake and his team slowly gained the alien woman's trust. They learned that her name was something like Kethara, though it was hard for human mouths to say correctly. She learned that the strange pink creatures were called humans, and that the one helping her was Jake. Jake used his medical supplies to treat her wounds. The medicine worked surprisingly well on her alien body. As she got stronger, she began to try to communicate more. She pointed to herself and said Kethara clearly. Then she pointed to Jake and tried to say Jake, though it came out more like Zake. "That's right," Jake smiled. "I'm Jake, this is Lisa and Tony." Kethara tried to repeat their names. Then she pointed up at the sky and made urgent sounds. She was trying to tell them something important. Through gestures and simple drawings in the cave dirt, she showed them about the black ships. She drew pictures of her people, tall figures with blue skin. She showed how the monsters had come and destroyed everything. Then she drew something that broke Jake's heart. She drew a woman sitting on a throne with tears on her face. She pointed to herself, then to the drawing. "Your mother," Jake said quietly. "You want to go back to your mother?" Cathara nodded eagerly. She grabbed Jake's hand and pointed toward the planet where the distress signals had come from. Jake looked at Lisa and Tony. Going to that planet would be incredibly dangerous. The Void Swarm ships were everywhere. They could all be killed. But this young woman had been alone and afraid for months. She had survived by hiding in a cave, eating whatever she could find, waiting for help that might never come. Now she was asking them to take her home to her mother. "We'll try," Jake said. He did not know if Cathara understood the words, but she seemed to understand his meaning. She squeezed his hand and made a sound that might have been "thank you" in her language. As they prepared to leave the moon, Jake wondered what they would find on Xerion Prime. Was Cathara's mother still alive? Was there anything left to save? He looked at the young alien woman who was now trusting her life to strangers from another world. Whatever was waiting for them on that planet, he would do everything in his power to get her home safely. The journey back to the ship was quiet. Cathara stayed close to Jake as if she was afraid he might disappear. When they reached the new horizon, she stared in wonder at the human technology. "Set course for Xerion Prime," Jake told his crew, "and pray we're not too late." The new horizon approached Xerion Prime like a small fish swimming toward a shark's den. Void Swarm ships circled the dying planet in dark clouds. Their black hulls moved like living things, constantly changing shape as they searched for new prey. "How are we going to get through that?" Lisa whispered as she watched the scanner. Jake studied the enemy formation. There were hundreds of the creature ships, maybe thousands. Each one was bigger than the new horizon. If they detected the human vessel, it would be over in seconds. But Jake had an idea. During the trip from the moon, he had been watching Cathara. The young alien woman had a strange ability. Sometimes, when she was upset or excited, lights would flicker on the ship. Electronics would act differently. She was affecting the ship's systems with her mind. "Cathara," Jake said gently. The princess looked up at him with large, trusting eyes. During their journey, she had learned more English words. Jake had learned some of her language too, though he could not speak it with his mind like she could. "Can you hide us?" Jake asked. He pointed to his head, then to the ship's walls. "Make the bad ships not see us?" Cathara tilted her head, thinking. Then she nodded slowly. She placed her hands on the ship's control panel and closed her eyes. The New Horizons instruments went crazy for a moment. Then everything became very quiet. The ship's energy signature changed, becoming something the Void Swarm scanners could not recognize. "Amazing," Tony breathed. "She's making us invisible to their sensors." They moved through the enemy fleet like a ghost. The black ships passed close enough to touch, but they did not see the small human vessel. Cathara kept her concentration, sweat beading on her blue forehead from the effort. When they reached the planet's surface, Jake could see why the distress signals had been so desperate. Cities lay in ruins. Great buildings that must have once touched the sky were now broken stumps. Fires burned everywhere, filling the air with smoke. But in the center of it all stood one building that was still mostly intact. It was made of crystal and metal, rising like a mountain from the destroyed landscape. Palace, Jake realized. That had to be where Cathara's mother lived. "Can you land us near there?" Jake asked Tony. "I think so. But Captain, those Void Swarm things are all over the surface too. We'll have to fight our way through." Jake checked his weapons. The New Horizon had some defensive systems, but nothing that could handle an army of alien monsters. "They would have to be smart, not strong." "Cathara," he said, "where is the safest place to land?" The princess studied the scanner display. Then she pointed to a spot behind the palace where the crystal walls would hide their ship. The landing was rough. Pieces of broken buildings scraped against the hull as they descended. When they finally touched down, Jake could hear strange howling sounds in the distance. The Void Swarm creatures were hunting. "Lisa, Tony, you stay with the ship," Jake ordered. "Keep the engines ready. If we're not back in 2 hours, leave without us." "Captain," Lisa protested, "let me come with you." "No, someone needs to fly this ship if things go wrong. And someone needs to protect Cathara if I don't make it back." Jake put on his environmental suit and checked his weapon. Kethara did not need a suit. She could breathe the planet's air. But she stayed close to Jake as they left the ship. The palace was bigger than Jake had imagined. Hallways stretched for miles in every direction. Crystal walls showed images of what the planet had looked like before the war. Beautiful cities, green forest, oceans full of life. Now it was all gone. Kethara led him through the maze of corridors. She knew exactly where to go. As they walked, Jake could hear her making soft sounds. She was calling for her mother in the Valerian language. Finally, they reached a great door made of living crystal. It was cracked and dim, but still beautiful. Kethara pushed it open and they stepped into the throne room. Queen Zarath sat on her crystal throne exactly as she had for months. Her head was down, her silver hair covering her face. She looked like a statue of grief. "Mother," Kethara said softly in English, the word Jake had taught her. The queen's head snapped up. For a moment she stared as if she was seeing a ghost. Then her face crumpled and she fell from her throne. "Kethara." The queen's voice was like music and crying at the same time. She ran across the room and grabbed her daughter in her arms. Both women were weeping, their tears glowing with soft blue light. Jake stood quietly near the door, not wanting to interrupt. But he could feel something strange happening. The queen's powerful mind was reaching out, trying to understand who this alien creature was and why he was with her daughter. Queen Zarath looked up at Jake. Her eyes were like stars, bright and ancient and full of pain. When she spoke, Kethara translated her words. "She wants to know who you are," the princess said. "She wants to know why you helped me." Jake stepped forward slowly. "Tell her my name is Jake Morrison. I'm from a planet called Earth. I helped you because that's what people should do for each other." As Kethara translated, the queen's expression changed. She studied Jake carefully, her telepathic abilities reading his mind as much as his words. Then she did something that surprised everyone. She knelt down in front of Jake and placed her hand over her heart. It was clearly some kind of formal gesture. "She says thank you," Kethara explained. "She says you brought back the most precious thing in the universe. She says you are family now." Jake felt his throat get tight. "Tell her I'm honored. But we need to leave. Those creatures outside will find us soon." The queen stood and spoke rapidly to her daughter. Kethara's face fell as she listened. "What's wrong?" Jake asked. "Mother says there is nowhere to go. The monsters have taken everything. Our ships are broken. Our people are trapped." Jake looked around the ruined throne room. "How many people are left?" "Maybe 50,000. They live in camps near the palace. 50,000 people. Jake's ship could carry maybe 100. And even if they could get everyone off the planet, where would they go? The void swarm seemed to be everywhere." But as Jake looked at the queen and her daughter, he remembered something his father had told him long ago. "When you think there's no way out, you're probably just not thinking hard enough. Tell your mother something for me," Jake said to Kethara. "Tell her that humans don't give up. Ever. We'll find a way to save everyone." As the princess translated, Queen Zarath's expression changed again. For the first time in months, something like hope appeared in her ancient eyes. Outside, the sounds of the void swarm were getting closer. But inside the crystal throne room, 3 people from 2 different worlds began to plan what seemed impossible: the rescue of an entire civilization. Jake knew he was about to break every rule in the book. But as he looked at Queen Zarath and her daughter, he realized that some things were more important than following orders. "Kethara, can you translate for me?" he asked. When the princess nodded, Jake turned to the queen. "I need to contact my ship. We're going to call for help." Back on the new horizon, Lisa Parker was pacing the bridge when Jake's voice came through the radio. "Lisa, I need you to send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've found survivors of an alien civilization under attack. Request immediate assistance." "Jake," Lisa replied, "you know they'll court-martial you for this. First contact is supposed to go through diplomatic channels." "I know. Do it anyway." Lisa sighed and started typing the message. She had served with Jake for 3 years. She knew that once he made up his mind to help someone, nothing could stop him. While they waited for a response from Earth, Jake explored the palace with Kethara and her mother. The queen showed him the refugee camps. Thousands of blue-skinned Valerians living in makeshift shelters among the crystal ruins. The sight broke Jake's heart. Families huddled together around small fires. Children who should have been playing instead sat quietly, their large eyes full of fear. These people had lost everything, but they still cared for each other. "They're beautiful," Jake said softly. Queen Zareth understood enough English to catch his meaning. She smiled sadly and spoke to her daughter. "Mother says that her people used to fill the stars with light," Cathara translated. "Now we are just shadows waiting to fade away." "Not if I have anything to say about it," Jake replied. The response from Earth Command came faster than expected, but it was not what Jake had hoped for. "Captain Morrison," came the voice of Admiral Brooks. "You are ordered to withdraw immediately. Do not engage with alien forces. Return to base for disciplinary action." Jake stared at the radio for a long moment. Then he turned it off. "What did they say?" Lisa asked. "They said to leave." "And?" "We're not leaving." Tony Rodriguez looked up from his engineering station. "Captain, we can't fight those Void Swarm ships alone. Even if the whole Earth fleet was here, I'm not sure we could win." "Then we don't fight them," Jake said. "We outsmart them." Jake spent the next several hours talking with Valerian scientists. Through Cathara's translation, he learned fascinating things about their technology. The Valerians could speak with their minds across vast distances. Their ships could become invisible to most scanners. Their weapons could bend space itself, but they had one big weakness: they always did things the same way. For thousands of years, they had fought wars using the same tactics, the same strategies. They were brilliant, but they were not flexible. The Void Swarm had adapted to all their standard approaches. That's why the alien creatures were winning. "What if we tried something completely different?" Jake asked. "Something the Void Swarm has never seen before?" Dr. Nelson, the Queen's chief scientist, looked puzzled. Cathara translated his words. "What do you mean different?" Jake pulled out his tablet and started drawing diagrams. "On Earth, we call it guerrilla warfare. Instead of fighting the enemy head-on, you hit them where they don't expect it. You use confusion and misdirection." As Jake explained human military tactics, the Valerian scientists became more and more excited. These ideas were completely foreign to their way of thinking, but they could see the possibilities. "The Void Swarm expects us to run away or fight directly," Queen Zareth said through her daughter. "They don't expect us to split up and attack from multiple directions." "Exactly," Jake replied. "And there's something else. Those creatures hunt using telepathic detection, right? They can sense Valerian thoughts." "Yes, that's how they always find us, but they can't sense humans. We're not telepathic. To them, we're invisible." The Queen's eyes widened as she understood what Jake was suggesting. Over the next day, they developed a plan that was both simple and incredibly complex. The remaining Valerian ships would split into small groups and hide in different parts of the system. Human ships. Jake had sent messages to every Earth vessel in the sector, would coordinate the evacuation. The Valerians would use their telepathic network to stay in contact, but they would route all communications through human operators. This would confuse the Void Swarm's tracking systems. While the evacuation was happening, a mixed force of human and Valerian ships would launch hit-and-run attacks on the enemy fleet. They would not try to destroy the Void Swarm, that was impossible. Instead, they would keep the creatures busy and confused while the civilians escaped. "It's crazy enough that it might work," Tony said when Jake explained the plan. "It has to work," Jake replied, "because it's the only chance these people have." The first human ships began arriving that evening. Captain Susan Chen of the transport vessel Liberty was the first to respond to Jake's call. "Morrison, you crazy fool," she said over the radio. "Do you know what you're asking us to do?" "I'm asking you to help save 50,000 innocent people," Jake replied. There was a long pause. Then Susan laughed. "Well, when you put it that way, how can I refuse? The Liberty can carry about 2,000 passengers if we pack them in tight." More ships arrived over the next few hours. Not military vessels. Earth Command had forbidden those to come. But civilian captains, cargo haulers, and even some passenger liners. Word had spread through the human fleet that Captain Morrison had found aliens who needed help. And humans, Jake thought with pride, never could resist helping someone in need. Queen Zareth watched the human ships arrive with wonder in her eyes. "Why?" she asked through Cathara. "Why do they risk their lives for strangers?" Jake thought about how to answer that. Finally, he said, "Because that's what makes us human. We believe that all intelligent life has value. We believe that if you can help someone, you should help them." The Queen nodded slowly. "Your people are very strange, but also very brave." As the evacuation preparations continued, Jake noticed something interesting happening. The Valerian refugees were no longer sitting quietly in despair. They were working alongside the human crews, sharing their knowledge and skills. Children who had been silent were now chattering excitedly as they helped load supplies. Adults who had given up hope were now planning for the future. "You've given them something precious," Queen Zareth told Jake. "You've given them hope." Jake looked around at the bustling activity, humans and aliens working together toward a common goal. "No," he said. "They've given us something too. They've reminded us why we explore space in the first place." The plan would begin at dawn. Jake just hoped they were ready for what was coming. Dawn came to Zirian Prime like a whisper of light through smoke and ash. Jake stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching as the greatest rescue operation in human history began. 23 human ships waited in hiding behind the planet's 3 moons. Everything from massive cargo haulers to small courier vessels had answered the call. Their captains were traders, explorers, and adventurers, but today they were something more. Today they were heroes. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison," Jake spoke into his radio. "Remember, we're not here to fight. We're here to save lives. Stick to the plan and watch out for each other." Queen Zareth stood beside him, her hand resting on Kethara's shoulder. The princess had become their translator and communications link. Through her telepathic abilities, she could coordinate with all the Valerian groups at once. "The evacuation ships are in position," Kethara reported. "Our people are ready to move," Jake nodded. "Begin Phase 1. The first part of the plan was the most dangerous. Small groups of Valerian ships began appearing at different points around the planet. They used their cloaking abilities to stay hidden, but they were also broadcasting false signals to confuse the Void Swarm. The alien creatures took the bait. The black insect ships began moving away from the main planet, chasing the phantom signals. It was working, but Jake knew it would not last long. "Phase 2, he ordered. Now the human ships moved in. They appeared from behind the moons like a flock of metal birds diving toward the planet's surface. The Void Swarm sensors could not detect them properly. Human technology was too different from Valerian systems. Transport ships landed in the refugee camps and began loading passengers as fast as possible. Jake watched the numbers on his screen as thousands of Valerians rushed aboard the rescue vessels. But the Void Swarm was already adapting. The creatures were smart, and they were beginning to understand that something unusual was happening. "Contact!" shouted Tony from his station. 3 enemy ships are breaking off from the main group. They're heading for the transport zone. Jake's heart raced. If those Void Swarm ships reached the evacuation area, hundreds of defenseless Valerians would die. "This is it," he said. "All attack ships engage the enemy. Remember, hit and run. Don't try to fight them directly." The New Horizon dove toward the approaching enemy ships. Jake could see them clearly now. Massive black things that moved like living nightmares. They were twice the size of his ship and covered with what looked like armor made from consumed metal. "Kethara, can you jam their sensors?" Jake asked. The princess closed her eyes and placed her hands on the control panel. Immediately, the Void Swarm ships began moving erratically, as if they could not see properly. "It's working," Lisa shouted. "They can't target us!" The human ships attacked like angry hornets, darting in to fire their weapons and then racing away before the creatures could respond. They were not doing much damage, but they were causing confusion. More importantly, they were buying time for the evacuation. 70% of the civilians are aboard the transports, Kethara reported, but Mother says there are still 15,000 people waiting. Jake checked his scanner. More Void Swarm ships were coming. Soon there would be too many to handle. "We need more time," he muttered. That's when Queen Zareth did something that surprised everyone. She walked to the communications panel and began speaking in her own language. Her voice was strong and clear, the voice of a queen addressing her people. "What is she doing?" Jake asked. Kethara listened to her mother's words, then translated with tears in her eyes. "She's telling everyone that this is not the end. She's telling them that a new family has come to help us. She's telling them to be brave." Across the planet, the Valerian people heard their queen's voice for the first time in months. In the refugee camps, families moved faster. In the hidden ships, pilots fought harder. The queen's words were like a spark lighting a fire of hope. But the Void Swarm was adapting too. More enemy ships were breaking through the human defensive line, Jake realized that they were not going to make it. "Captain," Tony called out, "the main transport ship is having engine trouble. She can't lift off with a full load." Jake looked at his screens. The transport ship Liberty was sitting on the ground like a metal mountain, packed with 8,000 Valerian refugees. If she could not take off, everyone aboard would die. "Lisa, take us down there," Jake ordered. "Jake, no," Lisa protested. "If we go down to the surface, we'll be trapped too. Then we'll be trapped together." The New Horizon descended through the smoke and fire, landing next to the crippled transport. Jake could see Captain Susan Chen through her ship's windows, working desperately to repair her engines. "Tony, get over there and help her," Jake ordered. "Whatever it takes." As his engineer ran toward the other ship, Jake noticed something. The Void swarm ships were converging on their position. In minutes, they would be surrounded. "Kethara," he said gently, "can you contact your mother?" The princess nodded, her face pale with fear. "Tell her that it's been an honor to know her family. Tell her that humans will remember the Valerian people always." As Kethara translated his words, Queen Zareth stepped forward and placed her hand on Jake's shoulder. When she spoke, her voice was warm despite the danger around them. "What did she say?" Jake asked. "She says you are wrong about one thing. She says the Valerian people will not just be remembered. They will continue. And they will continue as part of a larger family, a family that includes humans." Suddenly, Tony's voice crackled over the radio. "Engines are fixed. All ships prepare for emergency takeoff." The Liberty lurched into the sky, her hull groaning under the weight of thousands of passengers. Around them, the remaining human ships formed a protective formation, but the Void swarm was closing in. Jake could see the enemy ships surrounding them like a closing fist. Then something amazing happened. The Valerian ships that had been hiding throughout the system all appeared at once. They did not run away or hide. Instead, they formed a protective circle around the human transports. "My people will not let their new family die alone," Queen Zareth said through her daughter. The battle that followed was like nothing Jake had ever seen. Human ships darted and weaved through enemy formations, while Valerian vessels used their advanced weapons to clear escape routes. Neither species could have won alone, but together they were something new and powerful. "All transports are clear of the planet," Lisa reported. "We can go." But Jake hesitated. Looking back at Zerion Prime, he could see the Void swarm ships regrouping. They would follow the refugees wherever they went. "We need to make sure they can't track us," he said. Queen Zareth understood what he was thinking. She spoke rapidly to her daughter, then turned to Jake with determination in her ancient eyes. "Mother says we must destroy the planetary communication array," Kethara translated. "If the Void swarm cannot contact their main fleet, they cannot call for reinforcements." It was a suicide mission. The communication array was in the heart of enemy territory, but it was the only way to ensure the refugees' safety. "I'll do it," Jake said. "No," Queen Zareth replied firmly. "We will do it. Together." As the New Horizon made its final approach to the communication array, Jake felt a strange sense of peace. He had saved 50,000 lives. If he died now, it would be worth it. But Kethara had other ideas. The young princess placed her hands on the ship's controls and reached out with her mind. Suddenly, the New Horizon was moving faster than it ever had before. Powered by alien technology that human science barely understood, they destroyed the communication array in a brilliant explosion of light and energy. As they raced away from the dying planet, Jake realized that they were going to make it. 3 days later, the refugee fleet arrived at a human space station on the edge of known space. Jake stood in the observation deck watching as Valerian and human families worked together to unload supplies and set up temporary shelters. Queen Zareth approached him, walking slowly but with dignity restored. Kethara walked beside her, now wearing clean clothes and a smile that lit up her face. "Captain Morrison," the Queen said in careful English. She had been learning the human language during their journey. "I have something for you." She held out a crystal pendant that glowed with soft blue light. It was beautiful, but Jake could sense that it was more than just jewelry. "This is the Heart of Stars," Kethara explained. "It has been in our royal family for 1,000 years. Mother wants you to have it." "I can't accept this," Jake protested. "It's too valuable." Queen Zareth smiled and placed the pendant around Jake's neck. Then she spoke in Valerian, her voice formal and ceremonial. "She is adopting you," Kethara translated with tears of joy in her eyes. "She is making you part of our family." The Heart of Stars is proof that you are now Prince Jake Morrison of the House of Valeria. Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. Tell your mother that I am honored beyond words. As the Queen embraced him, Jake realized that something incredible had happened. Two species from different worlds had become one family. They had found each other in the darkness of space and had chosen to protect each other. Later that evening, Jake stood with Kithara on the observation deck, watching the stars. What will your people do now? He asked. We will rebuild, she replied. But not alone. Mother has been talking with your Earth leaders. We